Shadow Man was released in 1999 for PC, PlayStation, Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast, and many years later for Mac. It is one of these action-adventure games that were really popular at the time and borrows heavily in terms of gameplay from Ocarina of Time as well as Tomb Raider 3, exploration, combat, and puzzles. The core mechanism of the game is almost like a collectathon, where you gotta collect Dark Souls, which function a lot like the stars in Mario 64. Throughout the world of Shadow Man, you got some big doors, and these doors all have a number of Dark Souls that you gotta have to be able to open them. But also, the Dark Souls augment your power level, which will make your main weapon more powerful, so this adds kind of an RPG element to the game. You also have to collect special weapons and items, which will also help you open some doors and go through specific ways. So it's a lot like in a Zelda game, you know. Basically, the world is wholly open, but you have to learn some abilities or collect some items to go through some paths that were previously unreachable to you. The plot of the game is very convoluted and involves your character failing his English major, then becoming a taxi driver, then a guy from the mafia leaves a lot of money on his backseat, and then he uses this money to buy shit for him and his family, and then the mob tracks him down. So he seeks protection from a voodoo priest, but he didn't read the fine print on his voodoo contract, so he is protected, but his mom and dad and little brother are killed by the mob. Then he becomes the voodoo slave of this voodoo priest, and then another more powerful voodoo priest defeats that voodoo priest, so he becomes her slave, but she turns him into a shadow man, which is basically like turning a mole cop into the top sniper for the entire US Armed Forces, full-blood guerrilla warfare. And so as a Shadow Man, he is the most powerful voodoo warrior there is. And one day, a demon from the Bible visits Jack the Ripper and asks him to build him a huge cathedral for pain, and also he goes to recruit in a modern US top security prison very dangerous serial killers, so they will help him hatch his plan of conquering Earth using modified dead people, and that is only half of it. Because of this, the game world is basically divided between underworld dead side, which is heavily influenced in terms of aesthetics by African voodoo, and the asylum. It blends steampunk, BDSM, and some Third Reich aesthetics. It's very unique, an original blend, and this gives the game a very special feel that you will not find pretty much anywhere else. The aesthetics are clearly the strong point of the game, and not only is it beautifully designed, the music and sounds are also really good. For a late 90s game, the graphics are really impressive, and it's one of the best looking games of the era, without a doubt, and the physics engine is also pretty good for that time. The major flaw of the game would be that it's one of these where the fuck am I supposed to go now games. It doesn't hold your hand at all, which for some people is a plus, but really it's one of these games that are better played with a guide in hand, because really a lot of times you really don't know what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go, what's next, and the fact that there is no map and no indications whatsoever can make finding your way really cumbersome and difficult. Also, the controls are not perfectly adapted to a game with so much shooting and platforming. The controls are basically the same as in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Remember in Ocarina of Time how annoying it is to use the bow or to do some platforming action? Well, same in Shadow Man, except there is much more of it. Lots of gunplay, lots of platforming. These parts are not really hard, but can be a bit frustrating to play because of the not really well adapted controls. The controls were fine for most of the game, though. They're not downright bad. It just could have been much better if you could just move the camera like in an FPS. In conclusion, if you can get past the mediocre gameplay and cheesy monologues that sounds like they're ripped straight from an 80s speed metal song, you'll find Shadow Man is a masterpiece of visuals, music, and atmosphere. And it's also one of the only games I know that are based on the voodoo culture. And if you don't think that shit is hella tight, then get the fuck out of my face. Crocodile Death Speed out!